Okay, so are you ready to dive into The Gathering Storm?
Absolutely. This book throws us right into the thick of it, doesn't it?
It really does, and we've got a ton of excerpts to unpack. For those who haven't read it in a while, The Gathering Storm is the 12th book in Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson's The Wheel of Time series.
And it's a game changer. I mean, talk about an ending that leaves you wanting more.
No kidding. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's set the stage. We're talking about a world on the brink of apocalypse. Ancient prophecies, magic, a battle between good and evil. It's all here.
It's classic epic fantasy, but what makes The Gathering Storm so gripping is how those huge stakes play out in the personal journeys of the characters.
Right. It's not just about armies clashing, it's about individuals wrestling with their own destinies.
Exactly. And that tension between destiny and free will, it's everywhere you look in this book.
Well, let's start with the title itself, The Gathering Storm. I mean, it doesn't get much more ominous than that, does it?
And that sense of impending doom, it hangs over everything.
For sure. So how does that impact the characters? Let's talk about Randall Thor, the dragon reborn. He's the prophesied hero, destined to fight the Dark One,
Right, but the power he wields, it's literally tearing him apart, driving him mad.
which kind of defeats the purpose of being a hero, right?
Right.
If the power meant to save the world is destroying you from within.
That's the struggle that defines Rand in this book. He's carrying the weight of the world and battling this darkness that's corrupting him.
And it doesn't help that he's got enemies everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. We've got the Black Aja, that shadowy group within the Aes Sedai.
The Aes Sedai, just a quick reminder, are the women who can channel the one power.
Right. And the Black Aja, they've pledged themselves to the Dark One. They're working from the shadows, sowing chaos and mistrust.
Which creates this atmosphere of paranoia that permeates the whole story. It's like nobody knows who to trust.
And that suspicion directly impacts Egwene Elvair.
Another major player in the Gathering Storm, right?
Yeah, absolutely. She's been raised to a leadership position within the Aes Sedai. She's young, but she's trying to unite them against the Dark One.
Which is a tall order, considering.
To say the least, the Black Aja's influence makes everything harder. Egwene's constantly battling for control, both within herself and within her own ranks.
Talk about a tough job.
Yeah.
And speaking of strong women, we can't forget about Tyen, the daughter of the Nine Moons.
The Shan heir, now there's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, the Shan are a whole other can of worms. They're invading, throwing everything into chaos. They have their own customs, their own magic system.
They represent this massive clash of civilizations. Their arrival really forces everyone to confront their own prejudices. The Shanchan believe they're bringing order to a chaotic world, but their methods are brutal.
Especially towards women who can channel.
Right. They see it as a threat, something that needs to be controlled.
Which brings us to Matt Cawthon, our favorite rogue. He's always been one to defy expectations.
And his encounters with the Shanchan are no exception.
Seriously. Yeah. I mean, how does a guy like Matt, who usually just wants to be left alone, navigate this world that's falling apart around him?
Well, that's the thing about Matt. He's always caught between trying to outrun fate and getting pulled back in. He embodies this push and pull between destiny and free will that we see throughout the series.
And his relationship with Tucken, that just throws another wrench in the works.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's complicated, it's messy, it challenges everything we thought we knew about the Shanchan.
It's Wheel of Time at its finest. But before we get too deep into Matt and Tucken's unusual dynamic, let's talk about Perrin Ibra.
Our blacksmith with a connection to wolves.
He's on his own journey in the Gathering Storm, trying to figure out where he fits into all of this.
Perrin's arc is interesting because he's not out there seeking power or glory. He's trying to protect what he cares about, and that makes him a different kind of hero, a vital one.
You know what I find fascinating about the Gathering Storm?
What's that?
Is how the world itself feels like it's unraveling.
Yeah, the stakes have never been higher.
Right? It's not just the characters, it's the magic system too.
Oh, absolutely.
Take traveling, for example. Suddenly people can teleport and bam, the whole strategic landscape changes.
It's a total game changer. Like, someone hit fast forward on the whole world.
And the consequences, right?
It really throws everything up in the air.
Imagine being able to teleport anywhere, anytime. It makes you wonder how anything gets done with that kind of power at your fingertips.
Right. It raises all sorts of questions about the balance of power, the ethics of using such magic.
Exactly. And that's just one example of how Jordan and Sanderson weave these complex themes into the story.
For sure, for sure. The one power itself is another one, this force that can be used for creation or destruction.
And it's divided along gender lines, which, let's be honest, creates a whole other layer of tension.
It's a powder keg.
Hmm.
And it's not just a simple case of men versus women.
Oh, no, not at all. You've got factions within factions. We've talked about the Black Aja, but then there's the Black Tower.
The male counterpart to the Aes Sedai. And things over there are, well,
A complete mess.
to put it mildly, you've got men who are still struggling to control the taint on Sedin. They're half of the One Power, remember?
Right, right.
So you've got these power struggles, questionable leaders, and Rand, being the Dragon Reborn, is expected to whip them into shape.
Which, let's be real, is no easy feat. It's like herding cats, only these cats can shoot lightning.
Exactly. And speaking of dangerous forces, we can't forget about the Forsaken.
The Dark One's A-team, they are bad news.
They're not here to play games. These are powerful beings with terrifying agendas.
Manipulating events, spreading chaos.
Making life difficult for everyone, basically.
They're really good at it, too. Like, take Grandal, for example. Mind control. Talk about creepy.
Chilling. It really shows you how insidious the Dark One's influence can be.
Right? How do you even fight an enemy who can control your thoughts?
It's a terrifying thought.
It is. And then you've got Semirhage. Pure cruelty.
She embodies the absolute worst of what the One Power can do when it's twisted by evil.
Ugh, the stuff of nightmares. But, okay, before we spiral into despair,
Right.
there are still glimmers of hope, right?
Oh, absolutely. Even in the darkest of times.
Perrin, for example. He's on this journey of self-discovery.
His connection to the wolves allows him to experience the world in such a unique way.
It's pretty remarkable. And he's not driven by ambition or a thirst for power.
Like some others we could mention.
He just wants to protect those he cares about. And in a world like this, that makes him a different kind of hero.
An important one.
Absolutely. And then you've got Matt, who, as always, stumbles into heroism in the most Matt way possible.
He really can't help it, can he?
And his relationship with Toysin. It's like a crash course in cross-cultural understanding.
They challenge each other, push each other's buttons.
But they also find common ground. And it makes you wonder, even in the middle of a world war, is there still hope for peace?
Wouldn't that be something?
It's interesting, isn't it? We talk about this sense of impending doom, this feeling that everything's about to go wrong.
Yeah, like the other shoe is about to drop.
Exactly. But even with that, the gathering storm still gives us these glimmers of hope.
Little sparks of light in the darkness.
Right. These moments of connection that make you think, okay, maybe it's not all bad.
Exactly. And sometimes those moments come from the most unexpected places.
They really do. Like Rand's decision to cleanse set in.
Huge turning point in the
It
series.
was a decision born out of desperation, right?
He was at his breaking point.
But it also showed his compassion. He was willing to risk everything to lift this burden of madness, not just for himself, but for all male channelers.
It's a powerful moment,
Yeah.
and it makes you think, what would you do in that situation?
Right. What would any of us do if we were backed into a corner like that? What are we willing to sacrifice for the greater good?
It's a question that resonates, you know?
It really does. And speaking of tough choices, we've got Egwene trying to unite the Aes Sedai.
Talk about an uphill battle.
With the Black Aja constantly working against her, it's like she's trying to build a house of cards in a wind tunnel.
And the wind keeps picking up.
Right. It just never lets up. But she keeps going.
She's tenacious, that one. Stubborn as a mule.
This is one way to put it. But it's true. She doesn't give up. She keeps fighting for what she believes in.
Even when it seems impossible.
Exactly. Which, in a way, brings us back to Matt. He spends a good chunk of this book trying to outrun destiny, trying to stay out of the way.
But fate, as always, has other plans.
Always. But he finds a way, as he always does.
Stumbling his way into heroism.
Pretty much sums it up. In his relationship with Tuin, talk about an unexpected turn of events.
Two forces of nature colliding.
Sure. But somehow, amidst all the chaos, all the cultural clashes, they find common ground.
They connect on a level that neither one of them expected.
Exactly. It gives you hope, doesn't it?
Hope for what?
For peace.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe, just maybe, we're not doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over. That we can find a way to bridge the divides between us.
Well said. And maybe that's the point of the Gathering Storm. It's a reminder that even when things seem hopeless, even when the world feels like it's falling apart, hope endures.
We just have to choose to see it.
And fight for it.
Exactly. So we've got Rand battling his inner demons, Egwene trying to hold everything together, Matt caught in the middle of, well, everything.
The calm in the center of the storm. Or maybe the eye of the hurricane is more accurate.
That's a good way to put it. And through it all, The last battle is looming.
It's inevitable at this point.
Right. It's like the air is thick with anticipation. You can feel it building.
And you know it's going to be epic.
Oh, absolutely. Epic, terrifying, heartbreaking, probably all of the above.
Definitely all of the above. But hey, that's the wheel of time for you, right?
You said it. It keeps turning.
Oh.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the gathering storm, I'm left with one question. What will you take away from this story?
That's a good question. A lot to unpack, that's for sure.
Right. But maybe that's the point. Maybe it's not about having all the answers. Maybe it's about wrestling with the big questions, the tough choices, the things that make us human.
Even when those choices seem impossible, even when the world feels like it's on the brink.
Exactly. Because even in the midst of a gathering storm, there's always a glimmer of hope. We just have to be brave enough to reach for it.